Well, welcome to another episode of A Conversation to Create the Future. And today, in second season, episode 26, I speak with my good friend and entrepreneur, Ryan. And well, welcome, Ryan. Thank you
Hi,
for your
Aaron.
time.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, it has been, actually, we had our last conversation a couple of weeks ago. And so it's really fun to just build on top of that one. And and for those who watch the live session, just leave your comments, and even if it's the replay, just connect with us because it's a conversation we like to have, not just the two of us, but just in general, because we both believe that actually, if you change the conversation, you will start creating the future. And so today, I want to build on top of that topic. You talk so much about like purpose management and purpose in life, and I love to talk about future identity, like finding out who I can become. So it will be really fun to bring those two together in this conversation and
Yeah.
get some instruments out of it for people to not well to start the conversation, to engage, but also just apply in life practically.
Yeah.
So Ryan, like purpose management, what do you believe is one of the biggest obstacles that you could have or people around you experience have to live their purpose? So what's a big obstacle?
So, I think the two things you're talking about actually, that identity is a starting point to that. So, um, it's hard to have purpose if we don't know who we are, right? So, I think purpose starts with a self-awareness of who we are, how we're designed, and from there we can begin to understand our internal motivations, our internal world, kind of what we can build upon. But I think it really starts with self-awareness, and knowing who we are at our core. That it gives us something to build on, gives us sort of a direction to begin to kind of investigate, to get curious about. And I think there's a number of things that can open that up. Though we can have a very closed off posture. We can have one of the things I think that begins to open that up is permission. Permission to actually be grateful for the opportunity to be who we are. Like there's a settledness of just and authenticity. This comes through with people who are sorry, I'm rambling here for a second. The story that comes to mind is I felt boxed in at different parts of my life, but I got around people who had um, a a real authentic sense of who they were. And there's something about that in relationships that is permission giving. And I
That's a good
think
one.
that really, for me, and I've seen it in reverse with myself to other people too, that really having an identity, a knowing and a level of peace about who I am, that gives permission not only to be authentic, but for other people to. It almost serves as an invitation or a permission for others to do the same.
Yeah, yeah, I like that one. I just want to go back to that word permission. Um, like when I help leaders, individuals, or businesses with their future perspective, I always say like the future is coming towards you, and
Yeah,
you have to recognize the invitation. And if you experience a crisis is triggered by events, but actually it's your perception of the events which will bring you in crisis.
right.
And very, very easily said, um, a crisis is actually a misunderstanding of the invitation. That's really And I know this could offend people, could harm people, because the events could be horrifying, which really brings you in a really bad place and a bad state. But
Yeah.
if if you say that the crisis is your interpretation of it, and if you start to go beyond the crisis and say no to this is a crisis, I want to have the invitation because I want to get out of here. I want to get move forward. And depending the settings, it could be really, really hard, or just, I would nearly say, a flip of a second. But
Yeah.
the
I,
baseline is that the future is inviting us to join.
definitely.
And then the second step is that element of permission. Like, we raise up our kids that they should not live uh, on the permission and the acceptance and the confirmation of others. No, it's about from the inside out. They have
Yeah.
to have belief and trust in themselves. For us adults, we have to give ourselves permission to say something crazy, to think something crazy, to do something courageous, to express ourselves in our unique creativity. Every time, it's that we have to stop saying no to ourselves and
Yeah.
give ourselves permission to find out what's next, what's more.
Yeah. And you think about even the word permission, it's for the mission, right? For mission. And so permission is intrinsic within that is for the mission. Going back to something you just said, it's really interesting on a crisis that the same people can go through the same crisis and experience it completely differently. And there's some really good data in there that we can learn not only about ourselves but really discover the invitation you're talking about. So it's the crisis. I don't want anybody to think, and you mentioned this as well, that a crisis is good in and of itself, but there is some very unique experiences, responses that are in how we personally experience that we can begin to navigate and to really find where do we need a paradigm shift, where do we need to see the invitation, where do we need to give ourselves permission to move forward, because often those things actually come against our identity of who we are. And so part of the challenge in that is to recognize that how I experienced it actually is a setup to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love it. Like, it's for the mission. And I believe as a futurist that our mission is to find out who we can become. That's the individual mission that is for everyone out there. And that ties to self-leadership, ownership of your life, of your learning. But like, you're on a journey. Some call it the process, but I love the word journey. And in this journey, we sometimes don't like our circumstances. So we imagine what our preferred future would look like. Different circumstances, much better circumstances. If they're not better, then it's probably time that we find some help for people. But in general, your future is always bright. The person that you will become in that bright future is someone else as who you are today, which for some people, for most people, is really hard because we try to find out who we are today. And I always say, now, find out who you want to become, the person that connects to your preferred bright future. Because if you start living up to that, you start creating that future. So you get this whole forward motion, or promotion, if you want to call it, of creating your future. And that starts within your believing it, seeing it, talking about it, thinking about it, and then acting towards it.
Yeah.
But we have to also understand, I live in the present. But there's the disclaimer. I wish most people took that invitation, gave themselves permission to live in the present, which I say is face forward to the future, not backwards to the future, because then actually you live with your sight focused on what is behind you. We have to take the under 80-degree turn to start facing forward, our head, our eyesight focused on what will come, while our feet are in the now.
Yeah.
And then start moving forward. Like, time is a constant, it changes every time.
Yeah. So what comes to mind with that is, the difference between past, present to future present in terms of kind of our mindset and kind of the place we think and approach the present from. And there's a parallel that just came to mind when you were talking, which, goes back to when I was in choir and things like that. And when we were about to hit a note, we would sometimes, if it was a higher note, we would just naturally go and go up to it. And it's interesting. The choir director would say, no, you have to go above and come down on it. And the sound that we put off when we did that was completely different. Even though we were aiming at the same note, the way that we came at it created a different sound. And I think there's an aspect or a parallel to that between, operating from a past present mindset versus a future present.
Yeah. So to summarize, so that we can build on top of it, it's all about living our purpose now and finding out who we can become. So identity is about the next version of ourselves. Well, purpose is about our current settings. And I think that flips perspective, because it is easily possible to say, I want to know who I am today, and I'm going to find my purpose. Like, I hear that language a lot. Like, I have to find out my purpose. But from a business context, the word purpose is used as the reason we are doing it. It is the understanding the why of what we have. So it is the objective behind. So it's not about the purpose is what lays ahead. It's not like a destination. It's not a milestone on our journey of life, but it's actually what is around us, what is at hand right now. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of times words are used very differently depending on the context and who's speaking. But to your point, I view purpose as now, as current. I think from a business and I would say from a behavioral science standpoint, I think purpose is sort of the fuel of the intrinsic motivation and meaning that we bring on the journey. So it kind of fuels where we're at now. And so it's not I don't see it as a destination. I see it as more of a driver in our current situation.
Which makes it, when you say driver, I think, like, where does this fit in the holistic perspective that I have of man? Like, we are body, soul, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think if you say drive, that is something in my spirit. That's something on the inside that pushes me forward.
Yep.
That's where I say that's where I have this ability of creating perspective, where I have the ability for foresight. And I could say some really smart things that I've never heard myself say before. Like, you probably have that experience sometimes as well. I regularly have that I'm in a conversation and I actually give an answer to a hard question, and I think I'm learning from this even more than the person that receives the answer. Where did that come from? And I think,
Yeah.
that's that spiritual intelligence that we all
Yeah.
carry. And
Absolutely.
it's always connected to my drive, so actually to my purpose. But then, why is it so hard to embrace our purpose?
Well, I think we've had decades and decades of a workforce that didn't really care about it, and an education system that kind of took the intuition and went towards the externals. And we're talking about internals. And they're just, I think our society's kind of riding, we're harvesting, if you will, the seeds of what we've planted and emphasized. And that's the external. It's managing external performance and activity and all this stuff in a business context. It's not managing the heart and the vision and the motivation and the internal. We sort of say, that's yours to deal with. We just need this. And so it's a blind spot. I think it's been left out of the conversation. It's been left out of the workplace in a lot of ways, which is what I'm, trying to do with purpose management is actually create the constructs that facilitate so people can actually not only understand their purpose, but can bring their whole self into the work environment. And it does change things because people can begin to, instead of ticket punch, they can work from the inside out, and that changes the experience.
Yeah, but you mentioned workforce, and that's one thing I definitely reckon, that one, education. But I think in general we outsource those things to the forces that shaped our culture, and that is through the work, so that's through education. But in general, what shapes our culture is actually called religion.
Yeah.
So we have been outsourcing the internals to religious constructs, just say it nice, but they can't do it because that's outside, and that's that whole thing. Like we cannot put outside what we feel. We cannot put our purpose and just use it as a currency to hand it on in a big picture, and then expect that our needs are met. But when our needs are not met, we start to live in disbalance and actually start to have this, I would nearly say, side effects of not living a whole life. We lose our wholeness because we've outsourced our own personal, our self-awareness. That's the word I was looking for. You mentioned the word self-awareness. We were no longer self-aware of who we are and what our purpose is. The whole why question of me being here right now at this place with these people, I could not answer. And I need to answer that question.
Yeah. And I mean, religion has its own, I mean, that's a whole conversation onto itself. But yeah, there's a lot of things that play there with the centralization versus decentralized. So you get, sort of internal church focus where, whether it's said or not, it's often the experience that the people are there to serve the vision of the church. And like kingdom is external, and certainly includes the church, but it's much broader. It's and I think that's part of the disconnect there, is that a lot of people, their gifting, their design, their why is outside of the four walls, and so that's part of the disconnect.
Yeah, so we need to answer it on the inside, and it's outside the four walls. That, like, if doesn't that make us crazy and burn out? So the thing is, like, how do we overcome that obstacle that we are not aware of our purpose? So we have to find out who we are to know our purpose. But actually, that's the starting point, because it's about finding out who we can become, because that's the person we want to be, because that connects to the setting, the surroundings. That is the result of being that person. So then I imagine my purpose as something which is like I try to draw the picture in with words. I see it as a spiral. So like everyone is in the middle of their own purpose. That's their identity. But they are growing, so they're going upwards to become the next version of themselves. And on the same time, because we are living who we are intended to be, you use the word design, our purpose starts to have more influence and impact around us. So it's expanding. So you get this circular dynamic that goes wider and wider, which looks like a spiral that goes up, up. What could help me to start connecting to my purpose in the now while being at the same time on the move, on a mission? I think of the Blues Brothers when they say that like that. We're on the mission of God. And that was actually a crazy movie. Like whoever invented that, you probably got rewarded for it. Back on track. We are moving forward. How can we start moving forward when we have a hard time connecting to our purpose?
Well, I think being intentional and actually doing something. I think, activity breeds activity. And so I think as we lean into this, both in self reflection, there's lots of, activities we can do to grow in that and become data from what I call future data, internal data, and data from our past. All can actually give us kind of a fuller picture of who we are, our design, and not only our, what I'd say is original design, but also who we are now and who we want to become, creating kind of the tension and the journey.
Yeah. Well, when you say being intentional, and then I think of action.
Mm-hmm.
But being intentional with my actions, I choose the right actions.
Right.
But I don't know what my purpose is. So I have to do the actions based on my purpose to create my purpose. So I end up being stuck in this chicken and egg perspective of I need my purpose to be intentional, and I need to be intentional to do the right things to live my purpose. So when I go a layer deeper, I think of being grateful for what I have.
Mm-hmm.
When I threw in that like this culture shaped by religion, and if that's a Judeo-Christian society or any other, that really actually doesn't matter. In the moment it becomes a system that is served, we call it religion. And I borrow that from Seth Godin, who really said, like, if you have a bigger belief than the system you're serving, you're a heretic. And the system becomes religious. And as a futurist, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
And since last week, I have my new favorite verse, like faith eats data for breakfast. So I have a bigger faith than most of the systems, which means I'm actually never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Around me, a lot of people interpret it as that I'm not grateful.
Right.
And then I say, I am grateful. I am grateful, and I have to work really hard to be grateful for and recognize all the things I have that I appreciate, that I value. So I am grateful for what I have. I'm not satisfied because I'm hungry for more.
Yeah.
That drive you talk about, drive and hunger, for me, they go also are words that are connected. I have such a deep hunger based on the perspective I have for the future that I cannot settle for less.
Right.
And I have to, at the same time, be in the paradox. I'm grateful for what I have. So actually, And maybe that helps. I act with what I'm grateful for that I have, knowing, trusting that it will be an element, a building block for this bigger picture I'm
Yeah.
chasing after. Is that the word?
Hmm.
Maybe that's the word. Um, because I'm not satisfied, which really violates the whole Calvinistic culture that I grew up in. Because you have, like, from birth on, you have to be satisfied for what you have, and definitely don't think you can reach more or get to a bigger place. And I think what we talk about is the opposite of that. I'm grateful for where I'm born. I'm grateful for the people that are around me, but
Yeah.
also I'm going after something bigger, something newer, because it's part of who I am and it's part of who I want to become.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple thoughts as you were talking, we can be grateful for what already is and grateful for the invitation for more. Those aren't at war with each other. And we can also see the what's around us and the value of that, but also see what's ahead. And I think part of getting stuck actually is not seeing ahead and not being grateful for the invitation. That whole cycle effect, if we have gratefulness as a starting point, it actually opens us up to see the invitation and to begin to pursue something more. And so I actually think gratefulness is the starting point for not staying, but for pursuing. And there's a permission and gratefulness that allows us to not view life as a tightrope, but as kind of a wide open field to explore. And it's not this whole performance pass fail kind of thing. It's the joy of pursuing what may or may not be, knowing we're going to learn from it and grow and develop and discover what's not yet here.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned the word joy, and actually that sounds like joy, but also like enjoying the journey. I remember when I was in my late 20s that someone said life is about a process. And I was still in this, like, let's just typically like mid-20s mindset. No, it's about results. And that person said, no, it's about the process. I nearly killed that person, or at least emotionally, because I thought, go away. And now I could only say, he was actually true.
Yeah.
It is about enjoying the process, experiencing the joy based in the now, based on the bigger picture, the bigger perspective you have of the future, which you cultivate by being grateful. So that means that you're not someone with a bad temper and a bad mood because he's unsatisfied. No, it's someone who's really grateful and joyful.
Yeah. Which
But
the
it does,
irony is it produces better results.
yeah, it is. And everything is circular, everything is a paradox. Like that's how we try to put it in a box. Well, maybe it doesn't fit in the box because it's ever moving, ever extending. But going back to today, we have to embrace our purpose. And I think it starts with what you said, by being grateful and cultivating joy. And at the same time, being intentional out of that to chase the next thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think chasing the next thing is for me a source of joy. So it's those for me because I love adventure. I have a high value on adventure. That's actually part of the joy. So
Well, talking about like you have a really high, no, you have a really high value for adventure, but I remember you shared once that actually you put that as a value in your life completely to the side when, with hindsight, you misinterpreted an invitation and got completely overwhelmed by crisis. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely true. Yep. And my wife will say that I was the most miserable in that time that she's ever seen me, because I was very intentional. We talk about intentionality. I was very intentional acting against my own design, and it's a source of misery. So, which begs the question: how much misery is in our world because people are, by faith, trying to live against their own design?
Well, actually, faith, the ability of faith, the ability of future perspective, that's that spiritual intelligence element that's connected to our drive, our hungerness. So I would even say we adopt and adapt a faith that's not even coming from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just another rule book.
Yeah.
Like if something from the outside asks you to give a sacrifice, there needs to be a loud yes on the inside, or else it is really just poor leadership, manipulation. I just want to throw that one in. Like, no one is allowed to tell you, to ask you to give a sacrifice that is not with a loud yes confirmed from the inside. If you do it on fear or assumption or culture, you really have to start questioning yourself, because you really put yourself outside of your purpose. And you just disconnect from your design, you disconnect from your identity, which was, you just talked about it. That's the starting point of living a fulfilled life, where you have the big contribution that you carry with your unique voice, your unique added value that the whole world is waiting for. Like if we drill down on any person, what's your deepest drive? It always is, I want to make the world a better place. And that's not a Miss Universe line. That's just the core of us being human.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the core of you is designed to live your purpose, stand fully in your identity, and expand in influence and impact, and find out who you can become to create the future.
Yep.
I can't draw any other conclusion. And I know this doesn't fit the poor leadership paradigm, because this put people out of the availability to be a resource.
Yeah. Well, and it shifts leadership to create room for self leadership. So,
Yeah. Well, that's a whole new book to talk about. But also being mindful of your time and those watching or the replay or listening to the podcast. I just want to announce for those who haven't seen the Tigger that mid-November we will run another challenge at no cost. Well, I'm still struggling with that word. Someone said, don't call it a free challenge because you don't charge for just the baseline entrance. Someone said, don't call it free, but call it no cost. I would say you don't have to pull your credit card to join the challenge for just enjoying the sessions, but it will cost you everything. Like, get hold of your life, find out how you accelerate your future, what your perspective is, who you are today, who you want to become, to get that thing moving that Ryan is really passionate about, like your purpose. Start managing your own purpose before you start managing the purpose of your organization that influences the purpose of the individuals in the organization. So you're definitely invited. The more information is on thefuturechallenge.com, where you also can sign up get your free ticket to the Accelerate Your Future Challenge, or maybe even want to upgrade the experience to get the whole VIP package. But all the details are on thefuturechallenge.com. So everyone invited. Ryan, thank you for today.
Thanks for having me.
So what are we going to talk about in a couple of weeks? I guess it will be about purpose again. Yes, let's do that.
Good chance.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks.